Yep.
Okay.
Let me see. Okay.
Where are you going?
You ready, student?
Ready? Ready? Okay.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. Gentlemen, welcome to this class of today. We're going to speak about, before we go up and fly, we're going to do the short field takeoff today. Let's start with what is a short field takeoff and why we use it. A short field takeoff is a high performance takeoff that we do because not every day we have big runways like here. Sometimes we have to go to a runway that is very small and restricted, so we need to get off the runway as soon as possible. So we're going to speak to you and teach you how to do it. All right? So, and also there's going to be, there's some obstructions that we have to clear, so we're going to go over all this stuff, how in what order we do it and everything. So, okay. The first thing we gotta do when we get on the airplane, we start and we move to we get to our run-up place and we do our run-up and everything. Then we taxi to we configure the plane for departure. Meaning we're gonna have our in this airplane the Piper 28 RG is going to be 25 degrees of flaps. All right. So we have our flaps in, we have our trim set, everything to go. We do our checklist. Then we taxi onto the runway and we say, hey, we have to call tower to get clearance. So we call the tower to get clearance to get on the runway. Then after that, we are going to take as much runway as we can. For short field takeoff, we need to get the whole runway. So we're going to have to even if we have to put the wheel on the edge of the on the grass, we'll do it to get out as much as runway as we can. So meaning, okay, let's say this is our runway. We're going to start from. We're going to bring it like this. And we're going to taxi onto the edge and bring it here, like that. You understand the picture now? All right. So then the next thing we want to do is we double check that everything is set for takeoff. So we check our flaps is 25, we check our trim is good, and then when we go for takeoff, we're gonna have our brakes in, and we're gonna start nice and slowly bringing the power to full power. But still keep the brakes in. So this way we're going to check that our gauges are green. So once we check that our gauges, our power is full, and the gauges are green, then we release the brakes and we start rolling. Now remember, just like a regular takeoff, we're going to need a lot. We're going to need to compensate with the rudders. So we're going to need to put right rudder in to make, or well, right rudder because of the P factor, but also we're going to maintain direction with the rudders. We're not going to take off. We're not going to take off for the regular rotate speed. We're going to rotate at 55. As we're accelerating, and we check, and we're keeping direction with the rudders, then. But we're going to check that the airspeed comes alive. Just what we do in a regular takeoff. So now let's when we get to 55 and we have we're going to rotate back, and then we're going to pitch for VX, which is 63 for this airplane. I like to explain like this. What is VX? VX is the airspeed that's the best angle of climb. Then we have VY, which we use usually. There is a why this time we're not pitching for VYs because we have an obstacle. And if we pitch for VY, let's say we're in Atlantic City where it's buildings, we're going to go into the buildings. So we have to clear this 50-foot obstacle. So we're going to go for 63. So once we're up, we're keeping there, so we're going to go to pitch for 63. So this way we will clear the 50-foot obstacle. Once we clear the 50-foot obstacle, and we have a positive rate, first thing we're going to do, we're going to bring the gear, and we don't have no more, we're going to bring the gear up. The reason why we bring the gear up and not the flaps up, you might have a question, is because flaps are lifting devices and they give us lift. All right, so first we're going to take the gear up, and then once we are clear of everything that we have, and then once we clear the 50 foot, we can pitch for the climb speed. Then we can start retracting the flaps. All right. Okay, now let's speak a little. So that's the short field takeoff, and now what I would like to speak that it's about some common errors that students do usually, and I would like to speak into that about you because it's better for you to be aware of these mistakes before we get on the airplane. This way you might have some time to think about it. Some of the mistakes is that people forget, just taxi to the runway, forget to get clearance from tower. Then another most important thing we spoke about it is to make sure you use the whole runway. It's very crucial. Even 5 feet will make a difference. So, and remember to put the plane. If you have to put the gear on the grass, go ahead and do it. So that's one thing. So, another very important thing: configuration. You're not used to use flat apps on regular takeoff, so please use your flat apps to 25 degrees and double check, cross check that you have everything there. Make sure you use checklists. People forget to use the checklist to start the lights, transponder, and everything. So failure to use the proper checklist. People, they don't rotate at the speed they're supposed, or they forget that they rotate at the above airspeed, meaning they're not, we are going to rotate at 55, 50, 52 around there, so we forget that they exceed the rotation speed. Then, the other thing is that people forget to go to not pitch for VX, meaning they go for VY, and then they end up in the trees or the buildings. So make sure you hold those up so you can get the airspeed to 60 feet. And another thing is that people they put the landing gear up too fast because they want to go ahead and finish the maneuver. So make sure you put it after you clear the runway, clear the 50 foot. You have positive rate of climb. Okay, that's a positive. All right. Now, with the airspeed, you can have plus or minus 5 knots on the VX. That's your limitation as for this maneuver. Okay. All right. So, any questions you gentlemen might have about the short field takeoff?
One question, right?
Sorry? Yes.
You say advance full throttle, right?
Full throttle with the brake.
With brakes.
Yes.
Is am I flying a complex aircraft or
Complex aircraft.
so do I just advance forward or do I need to do something?
You have the brakes set, and slowly you put full power,
Okay.
and then you're checking the gauges. The prop, you have to make sure that the prop is full because it's a prop.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the pre-checklist. This is the pre-checklist that we have there.
Oh, the first checklist is the proper goes forward.
Yes,
I step on the brakes.
exactly.
I set 25 degrees flaps. I check the aircraft, systems, fuel pressure, oil pressure, pressure gauges, everything. Then I slowly advance throttle to full.
Yes.
When the throttle is full, I release the brakes, apply rudder as necessary to maintain directional control and to compensate for the safety factor.
They have to compensate for that.
Okay. Then let the aircraft run. Watch for first airspeed comes alive. Then I pitch for 60. So as soon as
you rotate at 55 and then pitch.
Okay, I rotate at 55. I'm in ground effect. I'm looking for 63. Then I pitch for 63. Now you said it was a 50-foot obstacle here, right?
Yes.
So I pitch for 63. And then as soon as the first speed rate of climb, you put the gears up, but I don't put the flaps up.
No, the flaps have to keep them until you get the higher airspeed.
Okay.
So the plane will not drop.
Oh, okay.
Actually, the plane, once you put the flaps to down, the plane will drop. So then you're going down. So you make sure you get a good altitude and a good airspeed before before you put the flaps.
And after I pitch for 63, and I clear a critical obstacle, I check the checklist for the VY speeds.
For the VY, not for VY, for 90 knots, like 80, 90 knots.
What's VY?
No, not VY. Don't pitch for VY.
No, pitch for VX until I clear the critical obstacle.
Yeah.
As soon as I clear the critical obstacle and my gears is up, I can pitch for VY.
It's for regular.
For regular climb.
For regular climb.
So I pitch for VY speed and then I climb at VY speeds and that's how I complete my correct? Okay.
And then when you reach up to the climbing, to the cruiser, well, you can like regular climbing will be about 80 to 90 knots approximately, so 80 knots.
Okay, so pitch. After I pitch for VY, of course, I'm still climbing for VY this way, then I can slowly put the flaps.
Exactly. Yeah, just
slowly put the flaps back up until the flaps come streamlined and then I fly there.
Fly there, back here.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions, John?
You done with the presentation, or?
We spoke about common errors. Time is 12 minutes. So.
Okay. Yeah, I got a couple of questions. If we have an engine failure on short field takeoff, how do we deal with it? Is there anything different you have to do compared to an engine failure on the normal?
Well, we have the I do like usually 4 things in my head before I take off. We do, one thing would be, if we get an engine failure and we're still on the runway, we're going to pull the tower to idle and stop the plane to the remaining runway. Then the other thing we're going to do is if we get an engine failure after rotation and we have sufficient runway, then we land the plane on the runway. If we lose the engine after takeoff below 500 feet, we're going to go straight ahead and land or use another runway. If it's above 500 feet, we're going to try to circle back and come back. That's what it is. On short field takeoff, if we lose anything else?
You explained that you have 3 options: engine failure on the ground, stop straight ahead, engine failure with sufficient runway, land straight ahead, engine failure with insufficient runway, straight ahead or 500 feet turn around to the airport. But my question was, what is the difference? Is there any difference between a short field takeoff engine failure or a normal takeoff engine failure? I want to know as a student. I mean, do I have to treat it any differently because it's a short field takeoff, or is it the same thing?
It'll be the same thing.
Same thing.
I mean, I cannot imagine doing a difference. You still want to go to 5. You still want to do the same things because the same principles. It's a takeoff, and we're not going to. We just want to clear it.
Okay. But the other question I had, you mentioned 25 degrees of flaps. On the short field takeoff, I just do normal takeoff with 0.
Yes.
Why do I have to use 25 degrees flaps on the short field?
Because it's going to give us lift at the lower airspeed. So then we can climb steeper too with the 25 degrees of flaps.
Okay.
Whether if we 0, we're not going to have the same amount of lift.
Okay. So why not 10 degrees or 40 degrees?
40 degrees is too much drag. If we have 40 degrees, we're going to have too much drag. 10 degrees, we're not going to have enough. It's still not going to be sufficient force. It's better to use medium, so 25 degrees.
Okay. The only 2 questions I had. Okay. At this point, the presentation is over.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead. What do you think? Self-critique. Tell me what do you think you did? You can put notes on the board.
Maybe
Things you could have done better. I mean, maybe you kind of after it you can. Oh yeah, I should have.
Maybe
Whatever comes up in your head, you can.
Maybe jumping around a little bit sometimes.
Okay.
Back and forth, a little bit back
Less
and forth.
jumping around.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree.
Maybe some jumping around I did.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit nervous sometimes presenting I was
I
confident.
think you were. You look pretty cool. Yeah. I've had people here just lock up.
Yeah?
Yeah, like for a minute they like lost their brain thought, and then just like the good pointer was you had your notes on the table.
Yes.
If you lose it,
Exactly.
oh yeah, completion.
Exactly. That's why at some point, that's why I meant by losing. Sometimes I was like, let me double check it. Because I don't want to give false information to the Dave.
Mm-hmm.
But when you asked me the student, when he was asking me the question, I was thinking about it in my head. And I was like, oh, there's nothing. You have to think the question of the student was, because.
And every time you're doing a lesson, this is FAA standard, have a lesson plan.
Yes.
So when you go for that check ride, you better have that book prepared in case he,
Yes.
talk to me about VORs.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you say. Because you don't need to invent as an instructor. You don't need to come up with stuff. With experience, you can do that. But initially, it wants you to follow.
Exactly. Okay.
Okay, what else do you think? Any other?
So far, on the top of my head, I don't think anything else. To my as a self-critique, obviously some things I feel that I could do better. But like I said, jumping around, like maybe I should have mentioned VY at all, or.
We're good. Presentation's over. You can pick up the phone.
It's
fine. You can pick up the phone. It's fine.
Μοιράτσκο, για σε notes τελειώ. Να μου ζω συγκλωβητέ. Έχω έτσι. Let me stop the video. So, Dorian, what else? Yeah, maybe I should mention VY, or maybe the only way I should mention it is at going to the buildings, then after takeoff, just continue to regular climb. Like I said, better still pitching for VY.
Yeah,
because,
I think the maneuver is the focus of this presentation. I know you're starting with, giving the subject overview. Then you have the how we do the maneuver, how we do, put on the board, what, why, and how.
What, why, how? What, why, and how?
The what should be about a minute.
Yeah.
What's a short field takeoff?
We'll have runways every day.
Yeah, I mean, keep it simple. Put KISS, K-I-S-S. Keep it simple, stupid. He's a student pilot.
Yeah.
He's going for sport. Within 20 hours, he gets his license. He's gone. He doesn't. He's not commercial level.
Yeah.
He just needs to,
Yeah.
So keep it really easy. So, what's a short field takeoff? Well, short field takeoff is a high performance operation. This is not something normal.
Not for
It requires special procedure, special technique, special skill, and you can use the airplane while you're giving the what? The special skill, special technique to lift off the ground as soon as possible. Why? Because we have a short runway. Not just that, it could be a short runway where it's 500 feet and then water. Well, we need to use the skill. We need to, or we have an obstacle. We have an obstacle on the departure end, and we need to clear the obstacle. That's another good reason why we do a short foot. Okay. That's it. 1 minute. You see, 1 minute. I told you exactly what's short. What's short. Let's focus on that. To kind of.
Do you think I was rushing to the lesson a little bit, or?
I think it was too short. I think you could have done a much better job explaining the maneuver. You could have done a much better job giving us the overview of what it is before you gone into the maneuver. And somehow it seems like you forgot to wrap it up. It was like you did completion standard, you did common errors, you didn't do completion standards, and you forgot to wrap it up. You just, any questions? It came out of nowhere. I'm like, wait a second. Blah, 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 done. You know, it was supposed to be more, you know, like,
So that's.
okay, so let's wrap it up. So what do you think is a short field takeoff and climb? Well, as we explained, it's a high performance, it's repeat what you did on the overview when you started to the end of it, you know, of actually, you know, wrapping it up.
So want me to do the wrap up?
No, this is pointers I'm giving you, so you can, you know, the presentation's over. I'm just giving you pointers. Marker, you know, you can keep it. This, I don't mind falling out of your hand, because this is what you need to have in your hand. Because one picture means 1,000 words sometimes. If you point this on the board and you say, well, we need to take maximum available runway, so we're going to go all the way to the end and line up when there's no runway behind us. This is what you need to, you know. The marker, obviously, if you're using the marker, you can use it, but I wouldn't hold it and then it falls out of your hand. It's a little bit of a distraction. Just the point. Okay. We talked about the overview. Somehow, wind was not mentioned at all.
Oh, the wind correction. Yeah, the wind correction.
I don't. Did you hear anything about wind? I didn't hear anything about wind.
That was nothing in here about wind direction.
What about common errors and completion
Failure to
standards?
clear the air, failure to utilize the road around with takeoff air, failure to have airplane properly trimmed drag, lift or resulting in drag, holding the airplane on the ground, blah, blah, blah. With forward inadequate rotation.
Trying to figure out if you have. Do you have a practical test standards for the private? This is instructor.
Instructor, yeah.
Have the private PTS or sports pilot PTS? No. Okay. It will mention, definitely mention wind. Okay.
Right. With the wind correction.
Absolutely applies wind correction as necessary. You know, to maintain a precise ground track. If it's still recording, you're gonna have all the critique on the tape too. So.
Not mine. Yours is recording.
Yeah, we transfer it over. We transfer it. No, don't worry.
Bluetooth or whatever.
Yeah, we can Bluetooth it over. Don't worry about it. If it's still recording, don't worry.
Oh, we're still recording. The reason why I like to record it first time with an instructor applicant is because you have time to sit in your home, relax, and review and watch everything. So you don't really have to take notes. Just listen to all the pointers. Okay. So wind is very important. It's in the PTS. It's in the maneuver. I would definitely put a windsock
Yes.
Why are we taking off to Atlantic City here? Or, you know, for the windsock where the wind, how it's, another very important thing that was missed. Coordination. Did you talk about coordinated flight control?
With the
Right, rudder. And emphasize on the short field takeoff, we're going to have to add a lot of right rudder. How much? As much as necessary to maintain coordinated flight, which is inclinometer both centered between the lines. Okay?
It's been white. The reason why you need a lot more right rudder on the
Because it's
BS climb instead of the BY climb is because your airspeed is slower. It's slower, and you do more key practice, so you need more right rudder.
Right. So mention that high pitch, slow flight, okay, high angle of attack, max power, a lot of right rudder to maintain coordinated flight. Okay. You see, all these things I'm mentioning now, if you would have taken a 1-minute overview, talk about the maneuver for 10 to 12 minutes, we'll cover everything we're talking about right now on the maneuver. Towards the end, give yourself 1 minute for common errors, 1 minute for completion standards, 1 minute to wrap it up. The whole presentation would have been much more, you know, much more organized. Okay? Rotation speed. You mentioned 55. Do you have your POH? Okay, you can pull the POH for the Piper. The POH for the Piper has rotation speed, liftoff, and barrier speed. Have you seen that? What
The
is
barrier speed I was looking for.
Yeah. David, do me a favor, find the POH for the Piper and show him on the short field takeoff performance chart what it says about rotation, liftoff speed, and barrier speed. I'm going to use the rest of the
Piper, it's what, Piper
Arrow.
Anything, Arrow, Cherokee.
28.
Keep it simple. Do Cherokee because it's easier for the student to
Yeah,
understand.
sure.
This is
Right,
massive
yeah,
there
yeah,
section, preparation.
Greasy out there. Boom.
Emergency
Should be like a performance chart where it's giving you barrier speed. No, just short field takeoff. Normal procedure, keep going. Look. Or takeoff, normal, keep coming down, one more click. Keep
No,
going,
no.
keep going. Keep going,
Check.
keep going. Okay, there you go, performance. Performance graph, 5.7. $25 takeoff. Keep going. Keep going. There you go. Can you flip it? So we can read. Okay. Liftoff speed, 57. Speed is 50 foot, which is barrier speed, 60. Okay? And rotation, I believe, is 55. So 55 rotate, 57 actually lift off, and then 60 is for the barrier speed, which is 50 foot up. So
that would be the X, right?
no, this is barrier speed. It's depending on the weight. If you're light, it's gonna be slower than 60.
Okay.
If you're heavy, it's gonna be heavier. So you gotta you know. Have you ever looked at that short field takeoff chart?
Yeah, I looked at it. I never know about the way.
You never know about the 50 foot obstacle speed. Okay. Always refer to the pilot's operating handbook.
Yeah.
This is the manufacturer, you know. This could be Piper. The Cessna can be completely different.
Matter of fact, all certified aircrafts, that's part of the checklist that they have to do to get the aircraft certified.
Yeah.
So they have to write POH based upon the specific make and model of the aircraft to the aircraft certified. So you can't just put a retractable gear on a Piper Cherokee and do the same POH.
Yep.
You need different
Exactly.
Use of checklist
You mentioned checklist.
on the maneuver itself or on the completions on the common errors?
You mentioned.
At the beginning, after run-up, you do the before takeoff checklist.
You mentioned checklist.
Yeah. Before takeoff, and then after I was like, and after what I forgot to mention was on the watch the reach cruise. You're going to do watch the reach 1,000 feet, not glide off.
Yeah, after takeoff
After
checklist.
checklist.
Yeah, after takeoff checklist. Yeah. I don't know. I only heard the checklist on the common errors. I don't know if he, but maybe he did mention the before takeoff, before taxi, and all that stuff. Okay. Pitch for VX63. What is the barrier speed?
60.
60.
So 60 would be.
Yeah. Now this chart is for max gross weight. It can be, when you're looking at the graph, it can be a little different. If you're lighter, maybe. So pitch for VX63 is VX63 at max gross weight, but the barrier speed can be 60 to clear the 50-foot obstacle. So it kind of depends. It's not necessarily.
Okay.
But we're talking 3 knots. It's not. Do we always pitch for 63?
It depends on the weight.
No.
On the temperature.
Do we always pitch
Let's
for
see the
63 knots?
On a
not
short-
some
on a short-
short field.
On a short field takeoff, do we always pitch for 63 knots?
Until we clear the 50-foot obstacle.
This is your strip,
Uh-huh.
500 foot, and you got water.
No, then you go to be what things just go to be what? Yeah,
Lift off,
it's
you're
just to
done.
get- because you have to get off the runway. That's what you have to do.
As soon as you lift off, it's done. The maneuver is over. You got water.
Yeah.
That's it. You don't have to clear obstacles. It could be either way. It doesn't have to be.
And then what I forgot else to say, once you clear the 50-foot obstacle, you can lower your nose so you can cool the engine.
Okay? So not necessarily 63.
Yeah, because
Max
you
takeoff available.
get up to the-
Hold your brakes. 25-degree flaps. Full throttle. Static RPM meant you got the power you need for takeoff. You look at that static. If it's too low, the engine is not in max performance. You may end up on the water.
Yep.
Actually, that's what I mentioned.
Rotate and lift off. When did you?
I mentioned if I was flying a complex aircraft, prop, Because I know if you put the prop fully forward, you can do the full horsepower without constant speed.
Yeah.
So it's not really established without constant speed. That's why I mentioned it.
For the examiner, what I recommend for the inspector, don't go arrow unless he wants you to.
Arrow, okay.
Because if you go arrow, the kiss is down the garbage. It's not simple anymore. You just took a student that doesn't know anything about, short field takeoff and explaining to him, now you're constant speed prop, retract, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, because in the beginning you mentioned the Piper 28201R. So I said, okay, so retractable landing gear.
It's definitely.
That's why I asked, is it a complex aircraft? Do you need to do, because it said this advanced port full step on the brakes and release.
Correct.
Because I remember there's a prop. What
But I mentioned also pre-takeoff check.
Pre-takeoff check.
Meaning that the props will be full before the checklist.
That's fine. You can do that on your check ride, okay? I don't recommend it.
Okay.
If the inspector says, teach me a short field takeoff on a 737,
wow, abbreviated checklist.
I'll just tell the guy, listen, I'm not typed in that airplane. I can't teach.
Exactly.
Shut him down. But, I don't think he's going to tell you to do this on the Arrow. He's going to, want you to keep it simple on the regular Piper.
So I will ask him what airplane you want. No, I want to
No, don't ask. Just keep it simple. Pop the POH for a Piper Cherokee and just do it first.
So this is the performance graph.
Yeah, simple. Again, remember.
I did it on the Microsoft Flight Simulator, the Boeing 737 check ride. It was a lot of information.
Of course.
The guy's like, this, that. Okay, set brakes, the RTO, do this, do that, pitch for this, put the flaps down because you need maintain below 200,000, after 1,000, retract the flaps, then pitch for 250. It's like,
Too much. Okay. Always 50-foot obstacle or not? We talked about that.
Yeah, we talk about the water.
A short field takeoff is not always with an obstacle. You want to mention both. Okay? Flaps are lifting device. That's what you mentioned. Flaps are lifting device. What about drag?
That's flaps. Flaps are devices designed to create drag on the aircraft, slow the aircraft speed. That's what they're designed to do. In the event of producing drag, flaps do produce lift, but they produce more drag than lift. This is the reason why I asked, what about 40 degrees?
That's right.
What about 10 degrees? If you put it at 40 degrees, you can create a lot of drag. So,
this is how I would explain it the easiest way to the student. Why do we have 25 degrees of flaps? At 25 degrees of flaps, we have more lift than drag. Because flaps add lift, at the same time they add drag. At 25 degrees, for the Piper, we have more lift than drag. At 40 degrees, we have more drag than lift. At 10 degrees, we have more lift than drag, but it's not as good as 25 where we have much more lift than drag. So the 25 is like right on. I'm getting the maximum lift for minimum drag, okay? That's why we use 25. That's the easiest way to explain. Common errors. Taxi clearance, power, use all available runway. Gear on the grass if you have to.
Check the maps.
Did you mention crosswind?
No, we didn't mention the
Not applying crosswind correction as necessary. Remember, if it's a 500-foot strip runway, whatever, and the wind is a direct crosswind, well, it's going to be a different technique because you're going to have the aileron all the way, going to add much more right rudder on the liftoff, and then immediately you want to mention crab into the wind.
Yes.
After liftoff, and you're holding
weather vane.
of course, you want to mention that the wind. Coordination, right rudder, also very important. This is very, very important. I've seen students constantly
Take off.
not step on the rudder,
Yeah.
and as soon as the airplane lifts off on a short field takeoff, that P factor, torque effect, and slipstream sends the airplane like 30 degrees off center line.
Yeah.
And the ball is way off center, like way, not even touching the rudder pedal. You got to step on the right foot, and it's very, very important.
Lusty. That's not an aircraft you want to fly right away.
You want to stay on
Because
Which one is that?
I remember there's a tail driver
Uh,
in Florida, took off. This was me. He's like, right.
Yeah, you got to step on.
yeah, same with the 172RG Cutlass. The 182. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to step on the rudder. Mention that to your configuration 25 degrees of flaps. We talked about that. Checklist usage. Okay. Call for the appropriate checklist. Or in the common errors, failure to do the checklist.
I said it, right?
On the completion standards, calls for the appropriate checklist. That's on the completion standards for the maneuver. You mentioned rotate above 55.
No, I said on the common errors. I said road.
Common. Okay, that's what.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, the common
So
error.
common error is to rotate more than 55. Well,
They lift because I repeated everything the whole maneuver briefly to be about.
so what was the pilot's operating handbook saying? 57 liftoff?
5 rotation, 7 and
57. Okay. So back then you'll say you want to rotate at 55 and lift off.
55, lift off 57, rotate.
Okay, so you want to rotate at 55 and lift off at 57, which is only 2 knots. It's going to come up really, really quick. And then the barrier speed. Well, 60. Hold. If you do have an obstacle, to clear the obstacle, you'd be at 60 knots. That's your barrier speed. Okay? You mentioned retracting the flaps fast and then dropping. Common errors.
Yeah, that was all common. Because some people, they just put the flaps down and then play with ropes.
Do we have to retract the flaps fast?
No, I didn't say to retract the flaps. I said once we get our airspeed and positive rate, we can take it.
So when you were talking about the maneuver, assuming we have an obstacle, okay, we're going to rotate at 55, we're going to lift off at 57, we're going to clear the obstacle barrier speed at 60. At that point, we're going to reduce the pitch to VX to VY climb, maybe about 2 degrees node down. Keep the positive rate of climb and accelerate. While we're accelerating, we can reach for the flap handle and retract it nice and easy because it's not a Cessna when it's an electrical motor. You have full authority on the flaps. You can tell the flaps, I want you at 22 degrees. You push the button, drop it to 22. So you can actually look outside. We're going to look outside, hold the same pitch attitude, climbing, and we're going to retract. And you can like talk through it, show your hands. I'm actually retracting the flaps slowly while looking outside, all the way down to 0 within 5 to 10 seconds. You don't have that drop. It's not going to drop. I mean, have you ever done it on the Piper?
I've done it fast one time just to see how it would go and pull that thing.
You can, within 10 seconds, if you look outside and change your pressure on the control wheel, you can slowly get the flaps retracted while nobody's even going to pay attention. Like the passengers wouldn't even notice it on a Piper. You cannot do it on the Cessna. You cannot. The Cessna is an electrical motor. It will just do whatever it wants. If it's a new motor, it's going to come in fast.
Except the 150 that you have to press and then take off.
Yeah. That's a different animal. Now we're talking Piper. Okay, so let's keep it in the Piper. You did say pitch for VX, not VY. I believe we talked about it with the shorts.
Yes.
If it's a short runway and there's water at the departure end, you can pitch for VY. Keep the positive rate of climb. Never
Never drop the nose to build speed, ever. All we're doing after liftoff and airborne,
Pitching for
pitch for the pitch attitude required for a VY. Okay? It's just no. There's an obstacle, well, guess what? You don't pitch to a VY until you clear that obstacle. KISS, we mentioned, keep it simple, stupid, not complicated. And you said Aero is a retractable gear, or it's RG. You said something about that?
That was he was asking.
Oh, he was, okay,
Yeah,
okay, that's what it was, okay.
Constant pitch.
You mentioned questions after the completion. Oh, you mentioned questions right after the common errors.
The completion standards is plus or minus.
Yeah, he mentioned.
I
Then
mentioned
how
plus-
they explain command is like.
It was like that, right?
Okay.
It wasn't like completion standards or summarized at all. It was like you skip a couple of very important steps on the presentation. We have overview, which is what it is. We have the maneuver,
Why do we do it?
Right.
why
How?
and how we do it. What it is and why do we do it and how do we do it, which is supposed to be about 12 minutes. Because this is the majority of the presentation right there. This is where it's at. This is the whole procedure, everything, spent about 10 to 12 minutes. After you're done with that, you have common errors. After that, you have completion standards.
The completion standards, this will be plus or minus 5 with the airspeed, right?
Yeah, completion. This is different PTS, but let's look at short field takeoff and climb. Tell you what you need to do here on the completion standards. Glassy water, that's seaplane. Okay, short field maximum performance climb. You know, I don't.
You know what I'm saying?
I don't see it on the CFI. Maybe on the CFI.
Problem is in the
It's not on the
oral. I have the oral in my back.
But the oral it is.
You know, pull the private pilot PTS. I don't want to go by this because this is not proper for a private. But it's basically maintains runway center line, maintain coordination, applies wind correction for the wind, maintain VX climb plus, 10 minus 5, accelerates to VY plus 10 minus 5 while retracting the flaps, blah, blah, blah. This is a completion standard. He's going to pull it. Look at short field takeoff.
Actually,
I mean, they renewed it. They put emergency descent and they put accelerated stall.
oh, not in private pilot?
On the private, they changed it, so maybe they got rid of those. I haven't kept an eye on it. Keep coming down. Okay, keep coming down. Okay, hold on. Certificates, keep coming down. Keep coming down. Okay. Normal. Keep coming down. Short field takeoff. Confined area. Task E. Page 45. All right, just go down. You can move this way. What do you want? Keep going. What do you want? Go up? Okay. Okay, perfect. You see? That's it. Okay, keep going down. This is the completion standards. If you have to read it, but do not skip it ever on your FAA inspector. If you skip this, You're done. The whole presentation is screwed up. It has a lot of information you gotta, look at.
I'll let them up.
And a lot of the stuff you didn't even mention. Said flaps you did. Clears the area. Taxiing and takeoff. I think you said that. Aligns the airplane on the runway centerline. Did you ever mention that? This is the completion standard. Applies brakes appropriately. Advancing the throttle. You said that. Smoothly. You said that. Establish and maintains most efficient landing liftoff attitude and corrects the positioning skipping. Rotates and liftoff at the recommended airspeed and accelerates the recommended obstacle clearance VX. Establishes a pitch to maintain, blah, blah, blah. Plus 10 minus 5. Plus 10 minus 5. Retract landing gear if appropriate of flaps after clearing the obstacle. So this is a computer science. You want to say that. You don't want to skip that. This is a must, okay? You gotta mention that.
I'll put it there.
After you're done with this, summarize. Or wrap it up. Then, question.
Okay.
And what happened with you did this, was okay, maneuver too short, common errors, you skip right into the question. Are we still recording or you need to take notes? Still recording? Because all these notes are very important. I want them to, today, tomorrow, next week, next month. Look at that tape and kind of set yourself up, in a way. Summarize, mention that. 11 minutes, and then question. Too short. Try, I'm not saying be exactly 15 minutes for the inspector, but, plus or minus a minute. He would, if you do this right, the whole oral exam is going to be like, he's going to be like, oh man, this guy knows his shit. He may just like, tell me about the law of recency or, law of effect. What is rote learning? What is understanding? What's the difference between